Rebuilding your life after divorce. It's kind of weird to say. But my name is Denzel. I'm your brother in Christ, okay? And this is really for Christian men because I am a man that has gone through a divorce. And I want to just help with kind of rebuilding your life, as a man. When you've gone through divorce, of course, no one expects to go through divorce when they go through it. It wasn't something in my vocabulary, my theology, nor my foresight. I thought I would do everything with my ex-wife, but life happens. So I'm gonna try to break this thing down in about 3 sections. So we're gonna talk about the beginning, we're gonna talk about processing, and we're gonna talk about planning. All right, and then I'll give you a little nugget of revelation towards the end. Hopefully this helps you. The number one thing and the first thing I want you to think about as I'm speaking because I'm going through this myself, okay? The number one thing, the beginning of all of this, what exactly happened? Can you be honest with yourself as a man and go back into what exactly happened? What were the chain of events that led up to the disruption of your marriage? Were you cheating? Was she cheating? Were you abused? Do you even have a language or vocabulary for what happened? This helps you avoid the same mistakes in the future. If you haven't been able to articulate the things that happened, if you've had no revelation of what you were doing or what she was doing in secret, and there's no type of framework, I want you to go back and revisit these things, and think about the steps that led up to it. Are you fully honest in what happened? Did you or her go against the marriage and violate the marriage? We all make mistakes. We all can agitate each other and get on each other's nerves. But there are things such as infidelity, whether it's financial abuse, sexual abuse, whether it is emotional abuse. Did you cross that line? Were you honest? Was she honest? Did she cross that line? And this will help you to identify some of those problems to start healing or to start correcting yourself. So let's just say you were cheated on. You have to sit with the fact that you are a victim in a way to betrayal. You have to really receive that and understand it and allow all those emotions, those feelings to process. Otherwise, if you keep pretending and if you never address these issues, you're never going to find healing. You're never going to be able to identify problems. I think it's similar to any type of stronghold. Identify the problem first, let it sit, listen to the problem, and then allow the Lord and start praying and asking the Lord to help you heal from the problem. All right. Whether it was you or her. Was it so toxic that both of you just gave up? Not all divorces should end with the infinite or with a breakup forever. Sometimes there is hope. Sometimes there is hope in a divorce or after a divorce. And just because you divorce doesn't mean that that relationship can't be restored. But did you all just give up in an immature way? Did you weaponize divorce and finally do it? Do you need to repent of that and go back to your ex? The Bible, we can argue and debate about it, but the Bible does list several exceptions. Of course, the Bible uses the term in the NIV, I believe it says unfaithfulness. The King James ESV uses the term sexual immorality. This is a broad term. So this is any type of sexual act outside of the covenant of marriage, whether it's prostitution. I consider pornography prostitution. You're paying to watch someone else please you and you're cheating on your spouse virtually. Physical sexual abuse, homosexuality, bestiality, any of those type of things can be grounds for divorce and moving on to someone else. Some would say even Paul in 1 Corinthians 7:15 says, if an unbeliever wishes to depart, let them go. You're no longer bound under such cases, And some people would argue physical abuse. And the way I can understand that is because if a person is saying they want to stay married to you, but they're physically abusing you, I consider that them saying, I don't care for you and I don't love you. And if they just keep doing it and doing it after you've forgiven them several times and they keep doing this, it's showing In my opinion, under such cases, as Paul uses that terminology, God has called a person to peace, and you got to let them go if you need to let them go. And I'll leave that at that because I'm still learning myself. But some would even argue other cases for divorce, and I get it. But you got to start at the beginning of everything, where the pain is and where the hurt is, okay? But transitioning on, this is where we go into processing, all right? Processing. So, with anything in life, especially computers, they receive data to process. If you get a text message, RCS or SMS gets that information from the cell tower, processes it, and puts out input, and then you receive a message from it. And the same with what you've went through in your divorce. The divorce means something to you, so you have to process it and interpret it and be able to understand it. So are you processing grief? One of the biggest things that caused me to grieve was my children. 7 days on, 7 days off. It sucks. 50% of the time I'm with my kids. I never imagined that. And it's some of the worst pain and grief that I've ever felt. And I'm at this point now where when the tears come, because they will come, when they come, I just cry. I give myself a open door to cry. And, I'll talk about that later, but it sucks. What are you grieving about? Are you grieving about your possessions that you lost? There was another issue. Before all the stuff that I discovered and grieved, because I knew I wasn't going to be with my ex, wasn't going to be with her anymore, and I was going to move on. And I definitely grieved that. It really pushed me to some very dark places where only Jesus could save me. I was pushed to almost turning myself into a mental institution. The weight of it, the heaviness of it, the suicidal ideation was very heavy. And the Lord delivered me, showed me to let her go. And he said he doesn't abuse. And, that's the way the Lord set me free. But you might be processing that grief of losing that person, depending on how deep the connection was, But like I said, your house. Us as men, we take on a job, we provide for our families, and we buy that house because we want to create a place where our family can grow and thrive. And losing something like that as a man, when you fix the sink, you fixed the plumbing, you've cut the grass every summer, you put in so much labor, and then to have to give it up, whether you sell it or whether that ex gets the house, it's some grief. You're going to have to process that. You're going to have to understand that you need to cry sometimes, Being cheated on, like I said, you could go to something where there's infidelity in your marriage. And this really hurts, especially when you're still willing to go with the marriage after you've been cheated on, and you're still willing to do therapy and counseling. This can possibly take your esteem very low, because you're esteeming this other person high, very high, when you do this. And after divorce, it can bring your esteem very low to where you're willing to be with anybody. Anybody that'll show you attention or show love to you or give you that warm, fuzzy feeling, you'll be willing to be with anybody. And God doesn't want you like that. You have value, you matter, and God doesn't want his sons with just anybody. If you're going to be with somebody, it's going to be with somebody that brings value to your life, cares about your purpose just as much as you care about their purpose. We don't want to just merely go into relationships and pour ourselves out to a woman with everything we have, and not understanding that we're called to also receive, and we're supposed to have a help meet for our personal callings, okay? Something to remember. Unforgiveness. Have you forgiven your spouse? And I understand the pain might reoccur every now and then, but become her intercessor. Do you pray for your ex? I wake up from tears all the time praying for my ex. I'm always praying, as much as sometimes we have frustrating situations, I'm going to be her intercessor. I'm going to pray blessings for her. I don't care if I'm in the courtroom and it's her attorney versus mine. God, give her attorney wisdom. Give her the best deal, and give me the best deal. That's the way I take this thing. We want to be Christian in these things, okay? Not to say that you shouldn't want justice, but be Christian about it, all right? Love your enemies. Pray for those that hurt you. Was the advice you got pure and godly towards the end of your marriage? This is very important, because some of us men, Um, Sometimes we get dogpiled on because men have dropped the ball so long. And then when you got a decent man in your community, people don't know how to receive and empathize with that man. And they'll take the woman's side. And I'm not saying it can't be the other way, but a lot of times it can be this way where the woman is coddled. And the man is like, you got to do everything. You got to love. You got to do this. You got to do that. They'll bring up all these scriptures on what a man should be and say very little to nothing on what a woman should do. This is something that I have seen. I know a lot of people in this generation say, well, people keep preaching women should submit. I mean, we're in a different social age online now. We're in a social age. We're not in a masculine type of age. We're in a conversational age. And I feel like the dominating conversation is that men should love their wives. But what happens when a man loves his wife and she's cheating on him, abusing him, and the man feels trapped in the marriage? You know, he's trying his best to hold on to it. And what happens then? You know, and I know there's a lot of women that have it on the other side where they're trying to do everything and their spouses, you know, it can go either way. But I'm just saying, I'm speaking for the man and I'm speaking for the brothers. Sometimes the advice you get as a man excludes your self-care. It excludes you being human. And people will dogpile on you. And I've seen it where I felt dogpiled on, and then as time went on, it showed like, no, Denzel is really trying to keep this family together. Denzel's trying to, you know, help the situation. But you got to look at that past. And this is why it's important to get a non-biased, educated Christian counselor. They're going to be able to allow you to see you have value too, just as much as that woman does. You deserve love too, just as much as that woman does. You should be loving and honoring your wife, but your wife should be submitting to you. Submission is still a biblical thing. Some of us men have become feminized in our marriages because we've been preached to so much to lift this woman up, lift this woman up, lift this woman up. And then you turn around and there's nothing given to you and reciprocated to you. And I talk to the brothers around me, and they, you know, they understand what I'm saying. So, of course, as men, we got to love our wives, lay down our lives for them, pour into them. There's nothing more powerful for me than pouring into another woman and making sure her purpose is fulfilled in this earth. Whether I got to stay home, you know, and watch the kids or whatever I got to do, you know, but, you know, men have to be loved. All right. Make sure the advice that you got is not biased. Okay. Are you open to counseling, and are you open to Jesus's help? This is where I would say self-care and wisdom. My definition as a Christian in self-care is really just care from the Holy Spirit. He's a counselor. He's going to take you back. You know, I'm healing right from my divorce. He's not only healing me from what happened in my marriage. He's using that open door that he has now to heal me from things in my past as a kid. And I'm learning and discovering things that happened to me as a child. My body still carries trauma and abuse inside of it. I never knew it was that. And the Lord is healing me from those things. You got to be open to counseling, at least from the Holy Spirit. You know, the Lord will show you things in your childhood. What I do is I'll then take those symptoms and look online to see what are these symptoms? What do most psychologists or therapists say about this type of bad behavior? For example, going into rooms and feeling timidity in your stomach. Where does this come from? Being around the opposite sex and feeling fear. Where does this come from? You can begin to then diagnose and understand that you're not the first person to feel these things. This is where you can get some type of healing, okay? And that's the processing. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is planning. Planning, okay? This is future thinking. What has God showed you about your future? I don't share this often, but I saw myself dating last year again. I thought the dream meant that I was going to fall in love with Jesus more. But literally, like he showed me last year, I would be dating again, and I would be very strategic, and my mind was so focused. And it's allowing me to have value as I look, you know, and not just sit back looking and just taking anything, okay? And that's why I'm slow down, haven't taken a woman out yet. You know, there is one woman that I do like, but I'll leave it at that. But This is why I'm so hesitant, because I love myself now. I love myself more, and I'm not about to just hang out with anybody. I want to make sure you're socially safe, that you love the Lord, that you really have a real devotion before you come near me. Right. But what has God shown about your future? Maybe you're going to be single. Maybe the Lord has shown you that he's making you like a eunuch and you're going to serve the Lord completely. What has he shown you about your future? Do you have goals? What do you want to accomplish? What do you want to build? For me, I've built a regiment in working out. So I run about 15 miles a week. And it's fun because I used to only run on the treadmill, and I used to only run for like 1 to 2 miles at a time. Now that I've worked myself up to 5 mile runs, I could go sightsee. So I run across the bridge from Kentucky to Indiana. I run up and down hills and all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's crazy, but I'm enjoying myself, and I'm losing the weight. I've lost over, probably since I've been divorced or like entered into divorce, I've probably lost about, wow, I probably lost about 50, 60 pounds or something like that. And you'll look at me, you think, well, he's just depressed. This is why. No, I intentionally cut back on my eating. I intentionally work out. I intentionally do these things because the last month, I think I've only lost 0.6 pounds. So I've regulated, and now I'm about to come back down. I'm gonna get down to 195, but that just goes to show, like, I was intentional about it. And God gave me the strength. It was something I really prayed about. And God gave me the strength to lose that weight. But I also have built a wardrobe. I have like a closet full of clothes that I like to wear now. I'm starting to dress up and make myself look good. And I found my style. I'm kind of like business casual. I like casual, but business casual. And I like to buy polos, go to the mall, shop a little bit. But what are you building? Maybe you need to build a prayer life. Start praying 30 minutes twice a week and start getting addicted to prayer. But you want to start finding things to plan. Do you want to go back to school? Is there something on your heart? I finished college after my divorce. After my divorce, I got my bachelor's. I continued college, even though I was going through divorce. And these are the things that's going to keep you going, all right? But there's one revelation I want to share in the end of all this. I believe the Lord showed me towards the end of the last year, and really the end of last year, that time frame. He showed me Jacob, and I believe the Lord changed my name to Jacob. And it's crazy because my son's name is Jacob. But when I believe the Lord changed my name to Jacob, I was just praising and worshiping God. And my daughter comes in with a t-shirt, and the t-shirt says Jacob's dad. I was like, wow, what's the chances of me praising and worshiping? And then my daughter comes in randomly and hands me a t-shirt, and it has Jacob on it. Right after God told me he was changing my name to Jacob. And what I've discovered with that revelation is Jacob left with a limp. And I feel like my limp right now is not seeing my kids every day, having them 7 days on, 7 days off. What is your limp? Maybe you really miss that spouse and you just can't get over it. I don't think it's natural. You telling me to fully heal is like you telling me to normalize that my kids aren't here 50% of the time. I don't see how I'm going to fully look at this and not get sad. Like, I love my kids. I've realized that, like, I love them more than I realized because they're my babies, man. They're my kids, and I've raised them, and I've been there every day. Through the pandemic, I used to have them and had to work night shift and have them in the daytime. But that's my limp. God blessed me, and he really blessed me after the divorce. I have no debt now. I still have my retirement. Like, I still got the Lord really looked out for me in the courts and whatnot. Some things I really didn't like. I lost a lot of things, but also gained some things. And you might have a limp. You might have a limp when it's all said and done. My limp, Jacob, after he wrestled with the angel and got his blessing and his name changed, he left with a limp. It put his hip was pulled out of socket or out of joint. And you got to ask yourself, what is your limp? because that limp is going to remind you that God is with you. You know, Paul says that 3 times he asked the Lord to remove the thorn from his side, which was a messenger of Satan to buffet him. The Lord told him, my grace is sufficient. My power is made perfect in weakness. And when we're needy and when things aren't fair and things don't go our way, it causes us to cry out to God, and it keeps us connected, so we can stay in communion with the Lord. So when it's all said and done, this video was about rebuilding your life after divorce for Christian men. And I love you. I'll be praying for you. Brothers, take care of yourself, love yourselves, face the music. If you messed up, face the music. And if you were abused and misused, revisit some of those things. Don't pretend like your divorce didn't happen. Stop running to other women. Stop running to drinking and to the drugs or whatever you're getting into. Sit down, clear your spirit, and allow the Lord to minister to you, okay? God bless y'all.